First, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Melanie Davis, who is the manager of REST, Recovery Experience, Sleeping Pills and Tranquilizers. And that is a support service for people who take sleeping pills and benzodiazepines, and it's based in the UK. She's also a member of KEP, which is the Council for Evidence-Based Psychiatry, and she serves on the all-party parliamentary group for prescribed drug dependence. Melanie has offered emotional and practical support to more than 3,000 people experiencing the difficulties associated with prescribed drug dependency. And for 30 years, she has also campaigned to address this devastating issue. We also have Lynn Cunningham, who is the co-director, co-producer of Medicating Normal. Angela Peacock, who you just saw her story in the film. She is a social worker, a former US Army sergeant, and a subject in the film. And then I'm here also. My name is Nicole Lamberson. I am a physician assistant. I work on the Medicating Normal outreach team. You've probably also seen me at Benzodiazepine Information Coalition, where I'm a medical board member. I also co-founded the Withdrawal Project, and I volunteer for World Benzodiazepine Awareness Day. So I guess we will pass the floor to each panelist so they can say a little bit about themselves or their thoughts and feelings about the film. And then while the panelists are introducing themselves, audience members, if you have questions, you can start raising your hand, or you can put typewritten questions in the chat box. So Melanie, would you like to go first?
Yes, good evening, everybody, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I don't think there's much I can add to that. Obviously, I've managed the REST project for 27 years, so I'm more than familiar, unfortunately, with the issues that are raised in the film. It's lovely to see you, Angie, and I got so much from seeing that movie yet again. I think we were one of the first services to show it in the UK, actually, last year. We were coming into the lockdown, so there were difficulties around that. So not as many people have seen it as I would like. I do notice a few faces tonight from REST, that's fantastic. And I've also highlighted it to various sort of friends and family members, because I think it's something, obviously, if you work in an area, or you are someone familiar with the problem yourself from a lived experience basis, it's sometimes hard to recall that not everybody is familiar with the issue. So seeing that film again, I'm immensely moved that there's no one part of it that I don't get a tremendous amount out of, and there's several bits that really I think are really impactful and really strike me. And what I like about it is there's someone in there for everyone, I think, to be able to identify with, or something is going to be that aha moment that is just going to pull it all together. So thank you so much for filmmakers for making it. Thank you for those that appeared in it. Thank you.
Okay, Angie, would you like to say something?
Sure. Hi, I'm Angie. You saw part of my story. I'm 5 years, 2 months off. I still have some pretty profound problems. Unfortunately, I just lost my service dog a month ago, so I'm in a grieving state, which has really brought to the forefront like just how much pain life can bring you regardless of what you're doing, and how there's no like easy answer for that. But I understand more than ever like why people want to be on medication when things are really hard. So anyway, I love when we do these kinds. So I know it's scary, but please, if you can be brave and turn your video on, it really means a lot to us to see your face, especially because we lost the in-person screening. So if not, I totally respect that too, but we just love to see your face. And I look forward to hearing what everybody says.
Okay, Lynn.
I am Lynn Cunningham. Thank you all for being here, and for you reminding us, Melanie, for the second screening. And we are very grateful to that, for you guys for that, because we hope this film can be screened again and again. And we are trying our hardest. Angie and Nicole are leading our outreach, and we are trying to really get the film to places that don't normally hear this kind of a message. We think of it as an untold story in major media. More and more, compared to how when we first started researching, it's starting to come out, the story, and that is so hopeful. But Anyway, if any of you have ideas about how we can get the film out, let us know. The film began, and I'm going to just tell you this because it's a question I get all the time. And the film began as really a quest to help a struggling family member. And she had graduated from a very competitive college and went through a very bad time in her 20s and was put on one medication, which after 10 years had turned into 10 medications. Benzos, I think two benzos included in that amount. And she really called me up every day. What am I going to be okay, Lenny? Was exactly the question. And, you know, our family at that point trusted all these great doctors. They were the best doctors in New York. And trusted that she was going down this path, and we didn't even think about it. But this everyday phone call began to really get to me, because I was not, originally I thought she was worried about her material well-being, but it just kept going. Is everything going to be okay? And I realized she was worried more about her ability to reach her potential. And the meds she was on clearly were not helping her. She was on disability. And so it just led to the research, and it meant reading 20 books on the topic, and that only touched the surface. Interviewing patients, doctors, people with lived experience. That's how we found Angie in this process. And we began to put a narrative together that was so unfamiliar to us when we first started out, that we just knew it had to be a film. So that's how it all started. And every time we screen the film, we learn something different, and a new reality takes place. And for that's why we're so excited to be screening it. I mean, recording this, because in many ways you guys are now part of the film and part of the message, and great questions are asked. And we want the pushback, like when we screen it for a more mainstream, we want them to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't my experience. We really want the pushback, because there's nothing wrong with pushback. It's actually what you need if you're going to advance change. So thank you again, you guys, and we're looking forward to our discussion tonight.
Okay, so the first question here is probably something, Lynn, you can answer. Are there any plans to get the film on Netflix or Amazon Prime, etc.?
Yes, absolutely. There are plans. Our strategy is first and foremost to have these community screenings where we feel, well, COVID took over, but in the beginning it was very rewarding, because we were in the community screening and people would stand up and there'd be a wonderful face-to-face. So the community screenings, we sold the film to a distributor for educational purposes in the US. So the film is being what we really care about, it's getting into colleges and universities. And the other is that there is a distributor for broadcast in Europe and abroad, internationally. So what we've been told by educational distributors is that it's a whole process, and eventually it will be available on our internet for sale, and or maybe, you know, Amazon Prime or Netflix. Those places are very hard to get into now if you've independently produced something. So, but at the very least, we have a website, and we will market it that way. But it will be out at the moment. It's our community screenings that are listed on our website, medicatingnormal.com. And there are a lot of them. These guys have been doing a great job. They're just screenings almost, once or twice a week, Nicole?
Yeah, 1 to 2.
More. If you look at our Google Calendar, there are lots of screenings. And so if you, anyway, though, that is how it's being shown. But it will be available on the internet too.
Yeah, and someone is saying, could this be made available for educators? Which, Lynn, could you touch on that? Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's our, it's an educational distribution, a really great company called Good Docs. They have 150,000 contacts in the US, but they also serve English speaking countries. So the UK would definitely come under it, and they, you contact them through the website, and they're absolutely, hopefully with their 150,000 contacts here at least, they're going to be getting it to educators. But as part of our community outreach, we've all been, interfacing with groups, nonprofits, wonderful organizations. So yes, educators were very interested in.
So let's see. The next question is, in the video or the movie, it was mentioned that 25% of people felt that psychiatric medications helped, 40% felt indifferent, and 35% felt it made their conditions worse. Is there any more evidence on that or data? Where did those numbers come from?
Well, I'll answer first, and then Angie, I know you guys, but that came from David Cohen, who is a professor at UCLA. It is anecdotal. It's in his experience, but he's seen it in studies, roughly broken down that way. And this, I will add, is the hard part of making a film like this, because you will have an audience filled with people who respond differently to so many of these drugs. So, but it is a reality of the situation, and it's partly part of the reason why it's so hard to make a change and to talk about the harm, because some people aren't harmed. And Angie, I know you have stuff to say on that too.
Good to say about that, because I would have fallen in that category. For 13 years, I thought my meds helped me. I was a compliant patient. I took everything exactly as prescribed. I followed directions. I was always open to taking meds. Like you saw in the film, I was on 18 at the same time. Like that takes away your ability to even know something is wrong with that. But I would have fallen in that category. So every time, unfortunately, I kind of like don't like that part, because it gives people like an out to say like, well, my meds help me, and so I can ignore the rest of the film. Like I fall in this category and I'm good, and unfortunately, like our stories are not static. Things change, your body changes, I change. I never had a goal to come off meds. That was not even on the realm of my periphery, that was even a thing. I had no idea. I was just doing like a harm reduction approach. Like, let's just take one less and see what happens. And then next thing I know, the drug turned on me. I was intolerant and I had no choice. So I was in that category for 13 years that I thought meds saved my life. They helped me. And maybe they did a little bit. I don't even know. I can't tell you, because I was so out of it, But yeah, I just think unfortunately nobody's measuring this. He said it. David Cohen said it in the film, like anecdotally. Nobody's really studying that. So,
Melanie, is there anything from your experience that you can contribute to that question, or even like kept, data or anything?
Yeah, I think, he made it quite clear, didn't he? He said of who he'd seen, and obviously he's scientific, so he's going to look at the research to back that up. But obviously from what I see, the only people contacting the project, contacting REST, because they are having a difficulty. So what I see is 100% of a difficulty. That isn't to say that some people don't, but I think Angie makes a really impactful point, that with tolerance developing, that you can establish a problem further down the line, and at the prescribing point there are guidelines for how long the drug should be prescribed, and the problems result when that prescription length is exceeded. And for those people who've had the prescription length exceeded, then we don't know who is going to have the problem. So I would obviously highly recommend that people look at it, be very judicious with their use, given that we don't know who would develop a problem, because it's not based on a kind of behavior or drug seeking behavior. It's based on the drug, and it is a drug of dependency, so it should be prescribed for a short period of times only.
So someone wants to know, has there been any pushback from the psychiatric community and or the pharma community? Lynn?
Yes, yeah, I would say, well, I would say surprisingly, we've had many community screenings like this one with more mainstream type groups, professional groups, and there surprisingly has not been that much Pushback openly with us. Now, we just got word back from a very not a public screening at Yale, but a grand rounds at Yale, where I think our contact there said, I'm not allowed to tell you what was said, but usually these grand rounds are spoken, usually it's about a little under an hour, and the film was shown and they spoke for an hour and 40 minutes. So that makes us happy. Do we know they loved it? I doubt they loved it. Do we know, we spoke to another colleague at Yale who said, listen, you guys, in the summer, the residents actually run the grand rounds, and the residents are going to do a totally different type of a grand round. So maybe our feeling is that, and I don't mean to classify it this way, but my feeling is an established, older, prestigious doctor is going to feel threatened by the film. And that's just natural, because what we're saying is, look, people are really hurt. So, but given that, I have not felt that huge defensiveness as one would expect. Pockets of it, but not really. Angie, have you?
No, I've
gotten that push?
Very rare. I mean, there's been a few patients, I mean, like 3, like in 137 screenings, there's only been 3 people, and that was most in person. You know, I don't know what people think after they hang up the Zoom. I have no idea. But in person, like one person, this was really moving to me too. And it leads off the other question, you know, the question of like, maybe you want drugs to help you deal with your life and your trauma. They work for you, whatever you want to call that. I mean, who am I to say like, no, you can't take, you know, drugs because you want the effect that it brings. So I remember one person that I met in Massachusetts who said, and this is her language, not mine, but she said, I'm a paranoid schizophrenic. I've had massive trauma. If I don't take these drugs, I will kill myself. So like she's getting an effect, right? It's impairing you in such a way. I mean, and that would be Joanna Moncrief from the UK. She does excellent work on this, like the drug-centered approach versus the disease-centered. So instead of, for that person, instead of saying, you have schizophrenia, let me give you antipsychotics, it's you're revved up, you're traumatized, you can't live life, you're suicidal, let's bring you down a notch. And what drug does that? An antipsychotic, you know? So it's more looking at like, what effect do we want the drug to have? So I'm not saying like I'm pro-drug, I'm just saying drugs have effects and some people like the effects. Does that mean it's working for them? Like it works, you know? There was a time I didn't want to feel anything. And it worked, you know what I mean? But even there, we need to know, like, what do you mean by drugs work? So, we've had a little pushback like that. Like people get, and I just had a conversation. Who was this with? I'm trying to think. I think it was a person that I'm going to interview in the next few weeks on our Facebook page. But I said, when people say things like you're pill shaming me, what's really happening there is like, you're hearing something that scared you. And like, I want to talk about what part of you got scared. Like, what did you hear that really triggered you? You know what I mean? But you can't say that like in a screening and say, oh, I thank you. I'm really not trying to pill shame you, but something in you, you know, because I don't want to give therapy to someone. But it's like, can we talk about the cognitive dissonance instead of the surface thing, like your pill shaming or your film is biased, or why didn't you include people that are helped by drugs? You know, all these things. It's really not about that. It's about people hearing information that is kind of scary. It goes against the norm. And like, but I want to talk about that. Like, how were you lied to? Like, how were you betrayed? Did anybody tell you about these before? You know what I mean? So anyway, just a thought.
Yeah. And Lynn, you and I had a conversation.
I want to.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you tell that story, Nicole, because
it
was your field.
Well, we had a conversation with a physician assistant organization, which I don't think you guys have PAs in the UK, but maybe you do now. I think it's coming over to Europe a little bit more, but all medical specialties have like an overseer group, like the American Psychiatric Association. So this one was for PAs, and Lynn and I were pitching the film to them for a potential screening. And she said to us, well, we just want to let you know, that we're funded with pharmaceutical money. And so they're probably not gonna like us showing the film. So there is that at play too, whenever you're trying to bring the film in front of medical groups and that kind of thing, they have ties to pharmaceutical companies who are big funders for their projects, and they don't want to lose that money. Lynn, were you going to add something?
I mean, I think it's that, and it's what Angie said, this sort of notion of cognitive dissonance. The Yale screening that I'm not supposed to know about what was talked about because it was a grand rounds, but I did glean that one of the critiques of the film was, well, it's not a balanced film. And we at Yale would never treat people the way those doctors in your film did. Or, it didn't say it to me because I wasn't there, but that was the gist of it. And, but we know, our team knows, because of the 135 screenings that we've had, that 5 out of 10 people have experienced doctors like that in the US. Maybe they're not at Yale, but they're all across the country. So I said to my friend, who was so wonderful and a good doctor and is aware and really liked the film, don't they want to know that, in fact, there is that kind of doctor out there that really doesn't know how to give informed consent, that doesn't know, never experienced this, that might not even know about it? Don't you at Yale want to know what's in the middle of our country? That is what Angie's talking about, the cognitive dissonance. It's not their experience, and they're good doctors, therefore they think the film is not balanced. Instead of saying, wow, it's not our experience, and boy, we better find out what's happening around the country in the field of psychiatry. So it's defensiveness on a professional level, I think. Or anyway.
And one more thing.
It's understandable and it's human, but yeah.
One more thing is just what I've noticed with mental health professionals. When we try to screen with a group, it scares them. And they're like, we don't want our clients to see this, but we will watch it for training purposes and we'll discuss it amongst ourselves. So it's like they are acting as a gatekeeper to the information, which I'm sure has everything to do with their liability. And I've had even one person say, well, Lynn says this so beautifully about, they think it's dangerous. You can't show the film, it's dangerous. And we're like, it's dangerous not to show it. There's information that people need to know. If I would have known this 15 years ago, I wouldn't have lost half my life to psychiatry. Do you know what I'm saying? But so yeah, I just want to add that. But there's lots of hands raised too. Cool. Anybody else? Yeah.
Okay, so Running Happy. I was hoping you would raise your hand because I want to hear about your running therapy that you talked about.
Hi.
Hi.
So my name is Yifat in Hebrew, which means beauty. So I call myself beauty. I don't know if it's a name. So I say Running Happy Woman. I'm a social worker. I have a PhD in social work, and I work with. I used to work with women with breast cancer, and now I work with veterans, a lot of whom have post-traumatic stress disorder, and also very, very difficult mental health issues. I myself, I'm interested in the subject also. For me, I was a bulimic when I was young, and now I'm on Ritalin. Ritalin, you say also in English?
Yeah, Ritalin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ritalin.
Yes.
And just hearing about your movie, I tried to get off Ritalin for a few days, and then I stopped. In Hebrew, you say I broke. How do you say in English?
You broke. Yeah.
Yeah. I continue taking Ritalin. It's just, as you said, I like your approach because there are benefits for the medicines, and I took Cipralex also, Cipralex Prozac once, and sometimes I have 6 children, and after pregnancies, sometimes when I didn't want to feel so much, I had to continue my life. I had children to take care of. I had a job to do. I couldn't go inside deep. I had to have some quick fix to help me cope. And in Hebrew, you say, Baruch Hashem, thank God I didn't get to the what I saw in the movie. I also only saw half. I'm so sorry. It's an election day in Israel, and I'm part of the election care group, so I couldn't see it all. I will write myself to another screening. What I say also to my clients is, of course, you can without medicine, And that's why I'm trying now running therapy for the past 2 years for myself and for my clients, which is great. I have a lecture in Hebrew now the second time, plan to do it also in English. Ciprolex or running. It's like Prozac or Adidas.
I love that. Oh my God.
Ciprolex or running. And it's amazing, amazing, amazing about why running is such a good therapy. Because I'm reading the book of Peter Levine, if you heard about him, as you know, somatic experience, about the energy. I can't say all, but most of the people who have post-traumatic stress disorder are people who somehow in their childhood there was some kind of trauma which they didn't solve.
Discharge. Yep.
Discharge.
Yep.
And now in the next trauma, it's build up, and running, it discharges the energy. That's just one aspect of it. Running helps the mental, the mind, the left and the right hemispheres work together. Running helps the prefrontal cortex together with the limbic system to get together. I'm reading all about it. It's fascinating. More than, I don't know, every runner will say it. I think I have a theory that all run, the more you're scratched, I don't know if it's a word in English, scratched, you also say in English. The more scratched you are, the better and faster and longer you run. When I had difficult years, I was a better runner. Now that I have a good relationship with my husband and I'm in a good place, I run less.
There's nothing to run away from anymore.
I solved. I vented out. I'm fine. Yachasit is relatively.
Yeah.
So I'm saying here a lot. I really want to hear. I want to see the movie again, and I want to be in another because it's fascinating. And from my experience, there are psychiatrists in Israel, which I want to interest in the movie. Someone called like Michael Polak. I don't know if you understand. He works in Tel Ashover in Shiva. He's an amazing person and psychiatrist. First, he's a person. How would you say in English? Like there's a mensch, a ben adam, a person. You say like a man.
Body, heart, a man. I don't know. What do you mean?
Yeah. First, before he's a psychiatrist, before I see him as a professional, I see him as a person, as a soul. How would you say it in English?
Yes, a pure soul. Yeah.
Yeah. Then he's a psychiatrist. I really like to send my clients to him because I know that if my child needed, I'll send him. He said we psychiatrists, we give medicine because we don't find other solutions or we have no patience for other solutions. And horse riding is great, and medicine and running is great, and he's all for it. And I know another psychiatrist, which I went, and he told me, no, you can do whatever you want with the Ritalin. I don't care about it, but you need psychotherapy and a deep one. So I'm really proud of the Israeli psychiatrists who I know.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, sometimes when people say, they stopped their medication and they broke or whatever, sometimes that giving up and going back is withdrawal, because if you don't do it, slowly and take your time, we don't want anyone to watch the movie and get scared and just throw their drugs in the trash. That can cause major withdrawal syndromes and stuff. So, if people do want to stop, it's usually a long, gradual process of doing so.
Very important. I did it because I know Ritalin is not like Ciprolex or something, which is really, you have to do it gradually, more gradually. Thank you. Good comment.
Joel, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, because I really would like to respond, not only as a professional in the field, because I'm a clinical psychologist, researcher, author on topics like very similar close topics, but also as a person who is literally at this moment having loads of withdrawal symptoms from an antidepressant that I have been taking. Actually, against all my own work and books that I've written about how horrible psychiatric drugs are, I have been on it myself for a while now, and I've decided to get off with the help of people. But I'm now really seeing how yeah, in theory, things sound horrible, but when you really undergo it yourself, it's 10 times worse. And I could not have imagined how bad actually psychiatric drugs can be. But anyhow, but first of all, I really want to say thank you so much for this movie, because it's really, really impressive. It's such important work, and also showing the lived experiences of people. And these are not statistics, these are not numbers, these are real people. And like, we have some people, lots of people here in the room who have been undergoing similar processes. And like, also what I'm saying as like a patient myself who is struggling with those experiences, it's very real in that sense. And I think it's so important to have that message out. And I think therefore this movie can really help to create a wider awareness internationally. So thank you so much for this, because I really think it's really important. And one of the things is what I really like is really the title of your movie. I think that is brilliant. I love that. Because it actually is also one of the things that often reminds me of, like, that there's a saying that quite often we suffer from mental health problems, which can be a normal response to abnormal circumstances. And actually where, unfortunately, quite often, just to give an example, where like several years ago, I was in a difficult work situation, and unfortunately I was, as being a European citizen living in London, I was beaten up by a Brexiteer. So I was really like suffering from some traumas, difficult situations. But the problems were the life circumstances. And my GP, my family doctor, was literally telling me, okay, Joel, you have two options. You can change your circumstances, immigrate from the UK, leave the UK, or get antidepressants. I had already written my book, Mental Health in Crisis, in which I was writing about how horrible the full system is. But at the time I felt stuck. I felt I cannot change my circumstances. So I thought, well, let's try antidepressants. Possibly I've been too negative. Possibly I've just been too much in the anti-psychiatry movement, and possibly I'm like just being too negative about it. But the thing is that actually now I have moved out of the UK because of all those reasons. And at this moment, for that reason, I'm also like decided, well, I'm getting off it, and I'm in a long process of already long time getting off my antidepressants, and it's tough, but I will get there. But it's also one thing that I really start to realize more and more, how our quite often mental health issues can be like a normal response to abnormal circumstances. And some people were asking as well about what's the impact, the mental health impact of COVID-19. For example, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on our mental health. And that's also a thing that I've studied, because I've written several reviews on the mental health impact, which was published recently in my latest book on the psychology of COVID-19. And really sorry for my promotion of myself here, but it's just because of people who are asking for some resources. So please ignore me. But if you will be interested, have a look at it. But I can really see how our societal circumstances of the pandemic, how that's really impacting a lot of people, and all of us, I dare to say. And the suffering is real, and it's in the sense normal, and that these are horrible words to say, because of course no one should suffer. That is, we never want anyone to suffer. And it's very much like what I'm looking at nowadays in my work, also as researcher, as clinical psychologist. I'm trying to look at, okay, what are alternatives? And not only about saying, okay, what's bad about the psychiatric drugs companies, etc., and what's bad about COVID-19, what's bad, but of course, there are loads of challenges there. But also have a look at what can we do. And I love the story about running. That's a great initiative. But also having like people to support yourself. And like your support group sounds so amazing. That's so good, I think. And that gives so much hope in those challenging times. But also, one of the things that I always focus on, I've been doing a lot of research on meaning in life. It may sound like a big word, but it's also just like a thing that we can do in a daily life. How can we live a meaningful daily life. And that can be just like going outside, listening to the one bird in the park, that can already make a difference. And just meeting other people and just sharing a smile, just that 1 second of exchange can really make a difference. And so that's the thing that I really believe in. That's also what, there was a psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, you may know his life story. He was like a concentration camp survivor. And he discovered that, how to survive a concentration camp, which is the worst of the worst, like the worst abnormal circumstance you can get. And he found out about when people were able to find anything meaningful that could help them through that period. And it doesn't say that like it made it fun. No, obviously that would be stupid to think. But what had happened, it helped people through that period. And that's one of the things that I really believe in, that Viktor Frankl, that he was saying, he who has a why to live for can bear with almost anyhow. So people who have like focus, albeit the tiny meaningful things in your daily life that can help you to cope with difficult circumstances. It won't make it happy and won't solve everything, but it will help you to bear it, to be able to carry on. And that's just a positive message that I also wanted to give. In addition to also the story, the hope that your movie is already giving. So thank you so much again for the movie. And yeah, sorry for my rambling and my self-promotion here, but I couldn't help myself sharing a little bit of that.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. I can actually vouch for Dr. Joel Bowles. We met a couple of years ago, and he came along to Rest, and his whole approach is just something we would very much accord with, because I think initially when people approach the project, it's more about finding technical and emotional support to come off the medication or have a bigger understanding of what is happening to them. So most questions I get asked is, am I going mad or am I dying? And when you hear that on a regular basis for the best part of nearly 30 years, then I think it would, occur to you really that what the person is talking about is the drug. So of course, everybody is different and everybody's circumstance is different, but the similarities are really quite shocking. And then beyond that, through the patient advocate work, through the counselling, through the campaigning, which is obviously a very important part, so we can get guidelines changed to amend this terrible situation. It's also an ethos. What Dr. Joel was talking about there. So one of the things, initiatives he had was something called Punks for Mental Health. May not be everybody's type of musical choice. It was one of mine. So I went along, thoroughly enjoyed the events, various Rest members came along. And I think this is so important, because also when you are just struggling to get through each day, then that is as most as you can sort of manage when you are a victim of the medication. You then go on to be a survivor, you then go on to be a thriver, and then you go on to be a warrior. And at that stage, you want other things in your life, whether it be the running, whether it be, looking at all your relationships. So this is something we look at in the group as well, but it's very much gender driven by the members themselves, and it's very much how far they want to take it. But we were very happy to host Dr. Joel, and we hope for many more artistic endeavours to come. And there's other people. There's the wonderful Janine Johnson, whose singing voice, honestly, would be, if you could hear it, that is medicine to the soul. I mean, there's nothing like it. Absolutely incredible, fantastic. Callista Kasuko, who has done a couple of videos around this issue, dealing with, well, the last one she did was Benzo Babe. She had a prescription medication one, very beautifully shot, great vocal, very imaginative. So, there's all these other things going on. I think it's a really exciting period for this issue, not just at the government level, that it obviously is brilliant, but from the bottom up, just how many people are getting involved. We're getting the word out there. And I can definitely say that things are looking a lot better than when I started in this field many, many years ago. So thank you for this film, because I literally, I think it was I'm a big film goer, so I can't say the exact dates, but it may have been about 20 years ago, the one about taking on the tobacco industry. And I was nearly cheering in the audience, and I thought, we need one of these for benzos. Now we've got one. And obviously the arena is open for people to put all different perspectives. I mean, there's very little that I could possibly add to the film. I think in the UK, and in the area I work in, it can be an affluent area, but there's also an area of wide socio-economic disadvantage. So I do get a lot involved with someone's benefits, their housing, you know, these very crucial things that you need. It's very hard to try and withdraw if you haven't got those things in place. So there could be a film about that wasn't touched upon so much, but you know, you can only do so much in the length of the film. You can't cover every possibility, but I thought what you did cover was brilliant. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for the film. It was brilliant and really appreciated it. I wondered if you had any plans to try to get the film to the UK medical profession at all.
Not per se, but we're open to all of that. And at the moment we have a broadcast agreement with a company called Sideways Films. So we're hoping that it will be broadcast there. But if you have ideas on how to get into this world, it's really hard to get into medical schools here because of what we talked about. But we're open to ideas. Please write us, because from our perspective in the US, the UK seems a bit more progressive. So we are sort of unofficially looking to them as leaders, sort of. So any group that you can think of, just let us know and we'll write. I mean, that's what we're doing every day, writing. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So somebody asked, and it may be different. I think Melanie, maybe you can talk about in the UK how this is, and then you know, we can answer for the United States, but how to find a psychiatrist or medical professional who can help taper.
It's extremely difficult. I think there's the kind of perception, because obviously the push of the pharmaceutical companies that much more so in the USA, that we are like a model of a bastion of you know, opportunity in the UK, but there isn't an aim to kind of like put forward for that. Obviously there are people working in this area with fantastic perspectives, but they're not necessarily to be able to be seen on an individual basis. So I think that, you know, the work I'm doing with Parliament at the moment on the committee is we really would be hoping to get more services up and running, whether that be a helpline or actual services. Until that committee is finalised, I can't say too much about what the work is or what the outcome will be. That's what we're aiming for. So at the moment, they're just not our names that we can give out like that. I do get a lot of inquiries outside of the borough. So to that extent, I do have various names of people that specialise in this area that can do Skype. And I'm able to provide those if somebody wanted to write to my email address.
Okay, can I just...
Yeah, Sue, go ahead.
Right, yeah, this is, yep, thanks for everybody's comments and input. I suppose from sort of my perspective here in Worcester, with providing that sort of peer support group, yeah, I saw the film a couple of months ago. Seeing it again is just, yeah, quite activating for me, but I still watch it. I mean, my quickly my experience, I'll try to keep it to 1 minute. So yeah, so I was prescribed medications, antidepressants, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers for 17 years following the birth of my third child in 1997. I was taken off cold turkey by a psychiatrist in 2013 whilst I was on a ward, with no discussion, no input from myself. whatever. Anyway, so I fell hook, line and sinker for the 17 years that I was on medication into the idea that I had a chemical imbalance, that the drugs would help me. Got to the stage after 17 years that actually nothing was helping me, and yeah, so I was taken off everything overnight by a consultant psychiatrist who felt it was appropriate to take me off cold turkey to try out a drug-free assessment. So quite a lot of anger towards the system. So now 7 and a bit years on, I have not gone back. I'm not taking any medication. I've been through, for the first probably 3 years after coming off, quite a protracted withdrawal. I've had I've been met with a wall of silence and denial and invalidation from the mental health system here in the UK. About 18 months, 8 months after I was taken off all the medication, I came into contact with Laura Delano, who provided me with a couple of face-to-face FaceTime consultations over a period of about 18 months. Introduced me to Robert Whittaker, introduced me to an alternative perspective, and really at that point in 2014 was the only person that I knew in the world who had experienced withdrawal. So at that point here in Worcester, there was nobody available that I could speak to who had gone through withdrawal, who even contemplated coming off medication. So that's probably one of the reasons why I was helping out. I've helped out Stuart with this withdrawal group to support people in withdrawal. In the 7 years since coming off, I have, so 6 years ago, I parted company or liberated myself from the mental health system. And I have, having been told that I would never work again, that I would always need to take medication. So I haven't taken any medication since I was taken off. I've been able to gain part-time employment. I've completed a master's degree. I am living now and not just existing. And part of the reason why I'm sort of here today, still able to speak and I'm alive, is not only that I've been able to heal from the medication, but also because I've changed my perspective. I have been able to disengage from the diagnostic framework of mental illness. I no longer see myself as ill. I see myself as responding to events in my life that were very, very abusive and traumatic. And so that change in perspective for me has helped me to keep going and live well. I've also connected with nature and take part in gardening, horticultural activities, similar to sort of the running, happy running, exercise type thing. Yeah, but I find, I suppose I'm sort of interested to, particularly with Melanie, about sort of the peer support aspect of withdrawal. And I mean, when we first started up the group in Worcester, we had an article that was put out in the local paper. You know, this is what we were doing. There was one particular comment online from somebody who said, this is dangerous, this is unsafe, this type of thing needs to be reported to the local safeguarding board within the city council. And for me, you know, we as peers sort of can support each other. It's also, I think, important to have some input from maybe trained, qualified, experienced professionals. However, I suppose I'm quite reticent, given my own experiences of professional input, and it has to be a very sort of
Careful.
I suppose mutual relationship between professionals and peers, and the support that is given. I think there needs to be a range of support available, and what is missing, and that's why Stuart and I set up the group. What is missing here locally in Worcester particularly is that there is no support from medical health professionals.
I quite agree with you, Sue, and obviously, you know, I accord with everything you say, and it's totally understandable you feel as you do. The peer support group, we have two facilitators, one of which is myself, and we sit back, the group runs itself, and, you know, the more it does that, the bigger success we feel it to be. And, you know, the service user lived experience is like a stick of rock throughout the whole of the service, and everything comes from that. All the training is co-produced. The presentations I do are with service user, the interviews are with service user. That is absolutely key. But we do have people in tonight who use the peer support group, so it'd probably be better to hear from them if they think it's successful.
Yeah, because it's really quite. You know, I'm a peer, but I'm sort of my part of my process, my journey, or whatever you want to call it. And it's sometimes, I suppose, difficult to know where without a facilitator or anybody, I don't know. I'm sort of caught between, well, this is just an organic peer support group. Do we need any sort of professional input? It's very tricky to be running. For me personally, it's been quite a challenge to maintain that mutuality, that reciprocal mutuality.
You're doing fantastically well. Yeah. Sounds like you're doing well, and it will evolve as it goes. I mean, we have a counselling supervisor that we take any issues in the group to, without the people's names, to just discuss that, so that we're, you know, confidentially supervised. So we have that element to it. Very, very rarely would we have to intervene, but I think you know, it can be useful to have the professional input as well. But I get what you're saying, that we always have to be aware of that power imbalance and to see if it's maintained. But as I say, there are a few people in tonight from the group, so I don't know if I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If Donna would like to say how she finds it.
Yay! I've been waiting to talk the whole time. So yeah, the thing is that like 10 years ago, I was like suffering with I just call it low mood now. When I look back on it, it was just low mood. Wasn't anything else. Okay, yeah, I was having slight panic attacks or borderline. I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't even call it panic attacks. I was just in a really shitty space. Sorry for my language. And was put on Valium, and yeah, sort of they worked fine for about 2 years, maybe. You know, I was doing great work, had the best life. You know, like massive family, great social network, friends and stuff like that. Brilliant job. And then obviously paradoxical effects. Everything became completely debilitating, mentally spiritually, emotionally, physically. I lost everything, you know, including my identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a voice. I completely pushed everyone away. And my behavior was completely out of character. And yeah, so it's been really tough. And I remember thinking I really needed to speak to somebody that understood me, and contacted this place in Bristol, and they said, well, hold on, you're in London, there's a place called the Rest Project in Camden. I was like, what? Are you mad? So I said to my boss that day, I said, look, every Thursday I'm going to be working through my lunch, and I'm going to be leaving early because I've got something to attend to. I didn't ask him, I told him. And I went hop, skipping and jumping to the Rest Project. In the first session, I just remember crying the whole session because I couldn't believe that I was sitting in a room where people immediately understood what I was going through. It was priceless. It was such a massive turning point in my life. And, you know, since then, you know, I learned about sort of how it works in the brain, and, you know, that I wasn't going crazy like I thought I was. Everything just started to make sense. And so, you know, the medication the doctor was giving me on the pill packet was take as when needed. You know, I don't know why I kept them. I've kept the boxes. I don't know why. I don't know who I'm trying to prove, who I want to prove, to why I needed to show that, like, I was taking up 50 milligrams a day and all of that. Yeah, unfortunately, I went out to a party and I had a blackout. I thought I was spiked, but I'd obviously spiked myself. I understand that now, 100%. But anyway, so yeah, you know, the Rest Project is just unbelievable, and it's a place where we can go. It's a safe, secure space where we can talk and share what's going on, and ideas and suggestions and stuff like that. And Melanie is she's awesome. Like, I can't believe I met somebody like her. And I'm so grateful, and I'm so honored to know her. And it was a case of, like, even with my doctor. So when I was trying to taper and everything like that, I was obviously going to the doctor saying what was going on. And they were saying, oh, this is happening to you. Why don't you take this? This is happening. It's a similar, you know what I mean, similar story to what we've all heard. And then I was on like a number of medications, and then I'd try them and they wasn't working. So they swap them and change them to another one. You know what? I'm looking back now thinking, for one, if something made me feel so good that very first day that I took a Valium, it made me feel so incredible. I wasn't buzzing, I wasn't high, I wasn't any, you know, it was just a lovely vibe. It was just where I felt like I could manage my whole life. So, you know, I wasn't buzzing from it, but I should have questioned myself then, because nothing should make you feel like that. And if I would have really thought about it, I should have known that there was going to be like a massive drop. So yeah, so I attend the weekly Rest group, which I'm really grateful for. And I'm also thinking about doing like a counselling course that specialises in benzos, because I just feel like I needed to talk. And, you know, the amount of times that I spoke to people and they were saying, oh, whatever, you know, what are you doing? You know, why are you still on them? Blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And no one knew. So then I pushed them away. And over time now, I can't tell you the amount of people that are trying desperately to come back into my life. It's not that I don't want them in my life. It's that I became too strong without them, because we've become so strong. Like we're serious. Like I'm just speaking for myself. I've become so strong now, maybe just a little bit too strong though. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to like let these people in a little bit, but I don't even know if I want them back in my life, because they turned their backs on me. You know what I mean? And I don't blame them, because I didn't know what was going on with myself. So how can I expect them to know what was going on with me? So, you know, I'm just doing a lot of self-development at the moment, and it's really going well. And I love running. If I can get to that park, I live just across the road from a park. If I can get to that park on a day, I know that my symptoms are minimized immediately. Like the amazing euphoric high that I get from running. But, you know, there's so much paranoia that comes into it, even for me to get out the door some days. You know, I wouldn't go into my paranoia now because it's off the scale. And some days when I'm in the park, I think, thank you, God, for getting me here, because I'm surprised I'm even here. You know what I mean? What happened from there to there? So, yeah, but I just really wanted to say the movie was great. I'm quite disappointed that a few of the other people from our group didn't come. So hopefully they'll get to see it another time, but you've done a really fantastic job. And I really hope that hopefully, you know, this can be like maybe meet up a couple of times a year. I know everyone's busy and stuff like that, but we need to keep this going. We need to keep this movement going. It's too big, it's too powerful. And we've got a platform that I think that we should try and, you know, make the most of. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm mindful of the time. If anyone else has something that they wanted to share, we should probably.
Can I share maybe just a little bit, piggyback off of what Sue, Joel, and Donna said? You all were speaking to like the long-term impacts. It's not so easy. It's not just you come off the meds and you go back to your life, right? None of us, I wish it was that easy. In fact, there's somebody in the audience, I'm not going to call her out, but there's some, like recently I was in Texas and I literally could not even get my mail. Like I am 5 years off of meds and I can't even walk in the post office. And she, as a friend who's been through the same thing and understands, I was like, you have to come help me. Please come get my mail. So like, these are like long-term, it's not just withdrawal. It's like, we lost our childbearing years. I lost the ability to like procreate. You know what I mean? You lose friends, you lose relationships. We have each other. If I would not have known, I don't know. I was 6 days out of the hospital and I Googled benzo withdrawal. And if I would not have done that, I would not have ever known what was wrong with me. I would have turned around and went right back to the hospital, got back on meds, and probably never figured it out. And it was only for that intervention of Googling and finding benzo buddies and finding all my symptoms. I was like, oh my God, you know, I have no idea. So peer groups are so important. And I too have that problem with mental health authority, you know, like professionals. And I worry, I'm trying to be diplomatic as much as possible. But even this morning, I had a doctor's appointment for my visual symptoms that I still have 5 years off. And she kept asking me like, well, I'm sure you're experiencing anxiety and you're depressed. And I really want you to talk to a mental health professional. I was like, no, I am not. Thank you. If the things that I need to talk about are the harm caused by the mental health care system, and mental health professionals do not want to talk about that, you know? So I'm left with my own stuff, you know, that's what I want to talk about and they don't want to. So I still have problems. I'm probably the most difficult patient any doctor would ever have because, and I was trained as a therapist. So like, I know all the tricks, so you're not going to get any tricks over on me either. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that it's, you know, there's more to this. It's like a public health problem. It's the impact of meds when you're taking them and then getting off of them and having to hold, some people have to hold jobs and they raise children while they're tapering. And then you get off and then it takes multiple years to heal. You don't know if you're going to have an easy time or a hard time. And then you have to rebuild a life after that. This is a multi-decade process for some of us. So thank you.
I just want to read, I think we got to all the questions, but there was a comment here. This person said, I just wanted to say that I really love the mother who said we quiet the canaries in the coal mine when they are crying out something is wrong. I think that sometimes the meds are just convenient for everyone around the person versus the person. Having been put on meds at age 14 by a GP, I didn't have consent. It was my dysfunctional parent who consented. 25 years later, now still struggling to get off the medications and really scared of who I am without them.
Yeah.
So I guess now if Lynn or Melanie have any closing thoughts, we can go ahead and wrap things up. And yeah.
Just thank you for having me. And obviously, if somebody wants to contact by email, the service is really just for the borough, unfortunately, but I'll try and signpost insofar as I can. Thank you very much for sharing your stories, and I wish you all well.
I just want to thank everyone too for now becoming part of the film, because each and every one of you are, and it matters. It matters, Angie, it is an epidemic, and we have to keep the discussion alive. And just because someone hasn't experienced it doesn't mean they shouldn't be concerned that this is a reality out there. And that's what we have to convince people. So anytime we screen it, we love it, and thank you so much. And please stay in touch with us with ideas.
And Sue, you had your hand up. Did you have a closing thought?
Yeah, just thank you to everyone that's been here this evening. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Medicating Normal, for doing the film. And also, if I hesitate to say, but you know, anybody in the UK who would like to join our group, I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of a way to give out the details quickly.
You could post a link in the comment section.
But yeah, I'm not that technically quick-minded. So I think Stuart has posted details of how to contact the group and make contact with him on Let's Talk Withdrawal. Let's Talk Withdrawal, the
Facebook group.
yeah, I'll find a way to sort of share it. But yeah, if anybody wants in the UK that would like to make contact with us, feel free. It's usually contacting Stuart via his email, and I can't remember his email address. Sorry, I'm a bit at the moment.
So it comes under Worcester Withdrawal Group, so it can be Googled, Worcester Withdrawal Group.
Okay, great. Thank you, Trish. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Annie has something to say. Annie?
I just wanted to say quickly, thank you for the film, and I just thought it really captured kind of the absurdity really of prescribing, where you can literally be in there a few minutes and then you're just prescribed this drug and you're off literally sometimes within 5 minutes. No talk about it, just drug and off. And also with diagnosis, someone can call you up after you've been waiting 18 months for an assessment, wake you up out of your sleep. Half an hour later, you're diagnosed with bipolar and given an antipsychotic within half an hour of not even meeting the person. It's crazy. But also on the flip side, when it was mentioned about someone trying to taper down, it's a very quick conversation where, yeah, just half it or take a few granules out. There's no proper plan to reduce down. That's what I found, and you want to come off. So I thought that really come across in the film, that kind of the challenges of that. So it made me laugh, actually, the absurdity of it, really, how absurd it is, how you're given a drug so powerful and so life-changing in just a matter of minutes. So I just thought it was really that was captured well. So thanks for that. Okay, anybody else before we go? Speak now.
I must admit, I was curious with a couple of people I'm in that, I know more through sort of friendship connection, let's say, rather than my work, how, the film maybe came across to them as someone who hasn't taken the medication. Because obviously it's a film that, we want a whole, diverse, group of people to be able to see. So I was just wondering. Helen Dewitt, who's very experienced in the film world with this, how she felt the credibility of on a film level.
Thank you, Mel. And firstly, as a friend, it's incredibly moving to see how many tributes that you're getting, which as a friend, I know you really deserve, but it's lovely to see it on a professional basis as well. I mean, I was really impressed by the film. Noticed it was Joan Churchill's involvement, who works with Nick Broomfield. So, if we had more time, I'd be very interested to hear that. But I mean, just people's stories are so incredibly moving and shocking, and it sort of like brings up in me a whole array of emotions, from sorrow to anger and a lot in between. And just like everyone who's spoken of their experiences are clearly incredible people and have so much to offer themselves, their friends, the society at large. And it feels to me that you've been stolen from, you've had experiences and time stolen from you, and that's always had a massive impact on you, but a massive impact on society, because your society has been robbed of your input. Also, of course, a number of people in the film who are from the military, which again, there's clearly something wrong with the way the military is organised. I mean, I think we might all think that from other kinds of points of view, but how incredible people, you know, nobody's saying that people don't serve in the military, incredible people, you know, in many, many ways. So I just, I've learned a huge amount. You certainly count on my support for any campaigning that you might want to do. I do work in the film world a bit, so if there's anything I can do, it seems that you've got it well sorted with good docs, but if there's anything I can do to support the film, spread the word, then Mel has my contact info, so I'm very happy to help in any way I can. But thank you very much. I've learned a huge amount this evening, and I've really enjoyed sort of meeting you all virtually.
Helen, I got to tell you a story really quick about Joan Churchill. Okay, Joan Churchill
yeah.
she's the filmmaker. She's the camera woman. Okay, for other people that don't know, she and I were both in Baghdad, Iraq at the exact same time. She was there as a reporter. I was there as a soldier. Isn't that insane? That 15 years later, she's filming me in my living room.
That feels like it's meant, you know, there's something in the stars made that happen.
And she actually did a film called Soldier Girl, and it was all about female recruits being I guess when they split anyway, it's a really good movie, and she sent it to me to watch. I love her. She's great.
Oh, she's amazing. I mean, I don't know her personally, but I know her work. Oh, thank you for telling me that. That's lovely to know.
Okay, Jeremy, you have your hand up.
Mute is on though. You're mute.
I clicked it. It didn't work. So I'm a medical student in the United States, and I read Robert Whitaker's book, Anatomy of an Epidemic, like maybe a year ago, and it's really long and incredibly in depth, and like it's a very good book that I would recommend to a lot of people. And I think the film is really great, coming from someone who has never had any sort of problems with any addictions. I think it does a really good job at, you know, getting the foot in the door, because I don't think you can throw a bunch of facts at people immediately and expect them to be interested in it. So I think maybe, you know, there will be a follow-up film or some future work that will get a little bit more into the science, which I do think is necessary, especially for medical professionals. You know, like they don't accept anything until you throw them a bunch of RCT, randomized controlled trials, and it's ridiculous how, you know, how backwards that is when the science originally was so corrupted that you don't even know what to trust anymore. But I did think the film is really good, especially from the emotional standpoint of your story, Angie and others. So it's a little disheartening just seeing what I'm going through and training right now. Like there's no understanding of this. Like they'll mention the fact that these drugs like benzodiazepines and certain other drugs, like they're addictive or they're hard to get off of, you know, and they'll mention that and they'll say, yeah, only use them for short term. But they don't really like paint a picture in people's heads of what addiction could look like, and how, you know, the same people running around addicted to heroin, like it's not any easier than that to get off of. So there's just not a great understanding from a student perspective. And I think a lot of it comes down to that's just how medical school works in the United States right now. There's not, you know, everyone is here because they believe in helping people, but they also don't understand how much medicine has turned into a pharmaceutical model, and they don't really. And I mean, when that's how you're trained and you don't know anything beyond what you were trained, you don't know how to help someone with depression from a lifestyle, exercise, you know, dietary stuff, that you don't understand the science of how to help people from that perspective, and you have 5 minutes in a room, you know, that's what you do. So it's the unfortunate thing that I feel like it's going to take multiple movies and a lot of effort to get people aware that this is a very, very it's not something to take cavalier, to just throw around SSRIs, which is seemingly what they teach us to throw for pretty much any condition you can think of. Just throw an SSRI at it if you don't understand it. So that's I'm trying to influence people around me, but a lot of people
Don't
Oh,
be
no.
picked up.
Oh, I'm smart. I don't criticize anybody unless I know they don't have any power over me.
Careful.
Yeah, but it
Where
is.
did you go to medical school, Jeremy?
I go to medical school in South Carolina, South Carolina, but it's a osteopathic school, so
Cool.
we have
That's
a little
awesome.
bit more holistic perspective, but it's not that holistic. So it's still pharmaceutical based, everything. So that's just the unfortunate part of medical school right now.
Thank you for coming, Jeremy. Where did you find out about the screening? Can I ask?
I actually can't remember because it was so long ago that I remember I saw, were you in some sort of film festival or something? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I think I saw that it was in a film festival and I was like, how do I watch this? So I went on your website and I saw that you're just doing random screenings. So I just signed up for this one. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Love it.
Jeremy, I just want to tell you one thing that is like in our community, like using the A word, saying that something is addictive, which it's true, benzodiazepines are addictive, but there's this like push in our activism to really define for the general public that physical dependence is totally different from addiction. So one is like a behavior, and then the other one, it happens just because you're exposed to the medication on a daily and regular basis. And people sometimes think that we only make the distinction because you don't want to be labeled an addict, or because we don't like the word, but it's more than that. It's like it's the whole understanding of how this happens to people. Like you go into the doctor, they tell you to take an SSRI or a benzodiazepine with no warning, so you unsuspectingly become physically dependent to this chemical that you're taking because you think you're following medical instruction, being a good patient, and the doctor knows more than you. And then you wind up in the situation where you're having this horrific withdrawal trying to get off. And what happens is then they say to you, oh, well, you're addicted to it, so you need to go to rehab. Or, like I went to a detox center to get off of mine. And I remember thinking, like, how is it that you take a medicine your doctor prescribes and then you wind up in a detox? Like, it doesn't make sense, like that you would have to go to a detox center to come off of antidepressants and benzodiazepines. Like, so the understanding of the two different concepts, like that, no, like most people aren't abusing benzodiazepines on their own. They're just taking them every day for sleep or for anxiety. And then they're shocked, to find out that, oh my gosh, I just followed these instructions and now I can't get off of this stuff. I can't function without it. So it's like this silent, making people into involuntary, physically dependent. But yeah, that's where the whole, feelings come from around the addiction thing. And two, if patients are labeled addicts, but they're just taking their medication as prescribed and they become physically dependent, especially with benzodiazepines, it's hard to get a repeat prescription if your doctor thinks you're an addict, right? But you need the repeat prescription to taper. You can't get off over a long period of time if they won't prescribe it to you anymore. So
yeah. I completely agree with what you're saying. I think that's interesting. Also, I was thinking there are some doctors that I've heard of in the United States that are aware of this problem and like are specially trained, they created their own system because no one's really doing this, trying to help people get off the drugs, but there are just a few of them. But that is something that I hope there's more resources on, because for the average doctor, I don't think they know what to do. Even psychiatrists don't know what they're doing when it comes to that. But what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say that, a huge problem is the fact that doctors, at the end of the day, you're seeing so many patients and it's a stressful job, and people get very jaded about who they're dealing with on a daily basis. And when someone is a difficult patient, it's just like, doctors, they don't treat them well. And that's something that we need to work on. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for being here, Jeremy, and for being open. Awesome.
So let's.
Richard Jones. Richard Jones had his hand raised. Where did he go? Did he just?
Yeah.
You want to go? Last chance. This is it. You got it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, in particular, Andrew, for your story. I think it's really powerful to hear counter narratives to what is otherwise often left quite unspoken. So I'm a psychotherapist and I worked as a support worker for many years. And looking back on it now, I almost feel a bit like a pharmaceutical henchman. And having had conversations where I was talking people into taking really heavy duty antipsychotics, there's more information available to me now about dopamine hypersensitivity.
Yeah.
And it's quite a traumatic thing to look back on, but a lot of the voices of people that I worked with then, very unlikely that they will have a platform to counter what is the huge status quo and the narrative around it. I was wondering briefly, because I know we're pushed for time, what people envision as being an evolution or what's needed in terms of spaces, in terms of holistic treatments. I'm particularly passionate about psychedelics coming into use and, for instance, MDMA for PTSD, things like that, the way that they can or could be used to offer a far more emotionally engaged way of treating people. I don't think we have much of the structures in place to do that at the moment, but I was really curious to hear what people think is lacking.
Melody, you want to say? You want to go first?
I think the discussions that are coming up are amazing. I think it is quite late, so we'd have to go into quite a lot of depth. I think in the training, I usually have a whole section on the difference between dependency and addiction, which obviously I get a lot of debate over, but I think we've got a way of putting it over and discussing that brings those different perspectives to bear in an interesting way. And the topic that Richard is talking about is another whole one again. I mean, in terms of what can be done, I think principally we're always trying to do something on a broken system in the kind of capitalist society that we live in. So I think without a fundamental change to society, these problems are going to arise. Once they have arisen, then our approach is very much support, information and enabling people to make their own choices, and that could involve a whole range of things. Obviously we wouldn't recommend taking any other substance, but you know, it is something obviously it's very much we encourage people to come to their own solutions. That's what our whole work is about. So that isn't something I would particularly, I wouldn't personally recommend that. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about that. And I think that could be a discussion for another evening.
Angie,
just from my point of view,
there have been screenings with, we did screenings with psychedelic groups, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it was hard for me to even do that because, I mean, ask Lynn, we actually, I had to like immerse myself in reading about psychedelics to try to like be more open-minded because I'm just so skeptical and I've been so harmed that, first of all, they're just contraindicated for people with psychiatric drug histories at all. So that wipes out 1 in 5 people right there. Secondly, it's still an informed consent thing, you know, and third, it's still a baseline assumption that there's something wrong with you. And I don't believe, even if it's just a PTSD label, I still believe that even people with a bipolar label, a depression label, there's still things happening in their life that can be either fixed or changed or worked around. You know, there's real reasons for these people having problems. There's not a chemical imbalance that just lands on people. It's so interesting to me too, like with the coronavirus, we can see it so clearly. There is an outside force creating anxiety in all of us, a collective trauma we are all experiencing together. It's not that a chemical imbalance landed on the planet. That is not what happened. So how we can hold these two things at the same time to like blame the individual and make the individual get treatment, but like still see the outside. It's just so strange to me. But so I'm not opposed to like, if people want to do things that make them feel better, it's fine. And I think Lynn would say this too, that it's different with MDMA because it's a one-time thing. You go, you have an experience, you work through it with a psychotherapist. It can help you integrate an experience. It's more on the spiritual end, you know, than like, you're not like, I don't know, It's not a long-term solution though. So I just would say be careful, and it's always just question everything. Why are we doing it? What do we think is wrong with you? Is that part of the experience to say, like, what do you think is wrong? You know, like, how do we integrate that? Because I mean, drug experiences are one thing, but I know people that will go to ketamine clinics because they're getting a sedation vacation. Like, you're going to sleep. Of course, good sleep is going to make you feel better. It doesn't mean the ketamine works. It means that you went to sleep. Your problems are still there when you wake up in 6 months down the road. So I don't know, controversial answer, but yeah, we could do a whole panel just about where do we see this evolving. I have so much to say about that.
Yeah, I think we need another whole evening of this.
An hour. Okay, we'll do a part 2.
From my perspective,
I'd just like to ask Jeremy if he believes there is a chemical imbalance.
Oh, yeah. So I don't really, I don't have strong feelings about that theory. What I'd say is that one of the problems with looking at depression or psychosis or other mental disorders in the DSM-5 or whatever is that from a medical perspective, we don't try to look for the source of them. So we see, you know, and my thought is that there's probably many sources and you have to treat each one accordingly. So if it comes down to someone who has mental anguish because of previous life experiences, that's very different than someone who has widespread inflammation. And I'm a strong believer in, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Kelly Brogan and some of the other lifestyle psychiatrists, but I'm a strong believer that inflammation taking place in the brain is probably a huge factor for a lot of people, especially with the rising rates of obesity and all sorts of inflammatory and autoimmune issues. So I think addressing that is a huge deal. And we're starting to do more research on that. And I think that's up and coming, promising. I also think that some drug therapies like psilocybin or MDMA in the future might show promising results. And I think they have shown some initial results. So that's encouraging, but that's not for everyone for sure. And then as far as like people who have, you know, the life experience part, that's the hardest one to deal with. In the United States, there's not a lot of funding. It's not cheap to get psychotherapy, but it is cheap to get, you know, psychiatric meds. So that's like probably the biggest thing we could work on is more affordable counseling and stuff for people. But yeah, I just think it's not a one size fits all issue. I don't believe that. I think while neurotransmitters might be imbalanced in some people, I don't think that's not the interesting question. The interesting question is, why would they be imbalanced? And even if that is the case, you know, there's a lot of other science saying that may not be the case. So that's my beliefs on it.
Thank you.
Well, let's wrap it up. Do you think? Yeah. Can everybody do me a favor tonight before you go to sleep? Because I know UK, it's like midnight or something. Go to either YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or something, and just follow us. Okay. That would really help because it helps grow our base. We're on everything. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And please be in touch with us if you need to or want to chat or you have anything else you want to add or ask us. We're medicatingnormal@gmail.com. So, okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It was great to meet everybody and hear from you guys. And yeah, stay in touch with us. So.
Thank you.
Good to see your face. Hi, Ian.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, Gina.
Thank you very much.
Lucy.
Thank you.
Donna. Keep in touch. Bye.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much.
Keep running in Israel.
Keep running.
Keep
Thank
running.
you. Take care.